Alright, on this Biology Explains, we're gonna be looking at the process that we all know and love of glycolysis. Glycolysis. Alright, so we all know that glycolysis is one of the first steps in general respiration. I say general respiration because it really happens before we really differentiate into any type of aerobic or anaerobic respiration. So glycolysis really needs to happen before any of that. Alright. Glycolysis really needs to happen before any of that. So let's have a look at what's happening for glycolysis. Now, I'm just going to be providing the simple information that persons for CAPE Biology Unit 2 may need. So we start off with glucose. We know that glycolysis, right, speaks to breaking glucose. So glucose, right, that's where we get the word glyco, right? And then we have lysis. Lysis or lysing means to cut. So what we're doing is we're cutting glucose. That's what glycolysis is about. So it starts off with glucose. Right? So we start with glucose. Alright, generally here, what we need to know about glycolysis is that we can divide them up into two different reactions, or two different stages. So we're going to call this stage the energy investment stage. So this is the energy investment stage, right? So in order to get energy, because this is the purpose of respiration, to get energy, in order to get energy, we're going to need to expend some energy. So here we have ATP being used. Yeah, the purpose of respiration is to get ATP, but in order to get energy, we need to use up some energy, right? And this normally happens, right, within the presence of here our enzyme hexokinase, right? And this produces glucose 6 phosphate, right? So it produces glucose 6 phosphate. After this, all the other reactions really exist in a type of equilibrium. Okay, so sorry about that. Let's continue, right? So we're gonna have generally what's happening here. From glucose 6 phosphate, we're gonna have an enzyme here which is called phospho, and now the names get really tricky after a while. So it's phosphoglucamidase, right? Phosphoglucamidase, or what we just call mutase. So it creates a different thing, right? So it's kind of, it just really mutates the molecule, right? So it forms fructose 6 phosphate. So notice how it changes glucose to fructose, right? That's what we're working with there, right? To glucose 6 phosphate. Now the next stage the next stage we have here, the third stage, is governed. Oh, hold on. Yeah, so we have that there. The next stage is governed by phosphofructokinase. Phosphofructokinase. And and it is a kinase, right? So phosphofructokinase, right? And this is a step where we're going to use energy. And this tends to produce now fructose. Sorry about that. Should be 1. Right, so fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So it creates fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. And then we're gonna have something called, then we're gonna have something called aldolase happening. Now, after aldolase, something really cool kind of happens, right? With aldolase, we can either have just a reaction going towards glyceraldehyde, so glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, right? But for aldolase in this reaction, it actually produces something else. So it produces also what we call dihydroxyacetone. So sorry about that. So it wouldn't be dihydroxy acetone, right? And that is a phosphate. Dihydroxyacetone phosphate, right? And in order to get, and then now what we have to realize is that within this reaction, right, we actually have to use glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So this dihydroxyacetone phosphate is converted to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate using a enzyme that we call triose phosphate isomerase. So triose phosphate isomerase, right? Really simple. So triose phosphate isomerase, and this will actually be the end of the energy investment phase. All right, from here on out, we're gonna be producing ATP. So in all of these phases, we see different instances in which we use ATP. So we used ADP here, we use ADP here as well, right? So remember to keep count of what we used. So far we used 1 ADP here and 1 here, right? So overall it would have been 2, and this is within 1 turn or 1 step of the reaction, right? So that is the end of that. But let's look into what we have now. Let me use a different color to show the energy payoff phase. Energy payoff. Now for energy payoff, the first reaction is going to be a type of reduction, right? What we can call a substrate level reaction. So we're gonna have 2 NAD pluses, right? And these tend to, have phosphates, organic phosphates, right? They're gonna produce NADHs, plus 2 hydrogen ions. Right? So we're gonna have this reaction occurring. And this is governed by glyceraldehyde 3 so it's governed by this enzyme, right? So it's the same name as this, glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, but it's dehydrogenase. Dehydrogenase, right? The words look a little bit messed up, but dehydrogenase, right? So we know that there. What is it gonna produce? It's gonna produce 1, 3. Well, sorry, wrong connections. We're gonna produce 1, 3 bisphosphoglycerates. So bisphosphoglycerates. Right? So we have that molecule being created from bisphosphoglycerate. Now we're gonna have the first payoff. 2 ADPs are gonna be creating 2 ATPs. So that's the first payoff there. So this is why it's called energy payoff phase. Because in the first stage we invested some ATP, some energy, and now we're actually getting some back. And this step is governed by our 7th enzyme, phosphoglycerate kinase. Right? So it's gonna be phosphoglycerate